The greenhouse smelled of earth, damp wood, and growing things. Sunlight streamed through the glass roof, catching the morning dew on the leaves and making everything shimmer like it was alive. Mia loved coming here early, when the world was still quiet, and she could lose herself in the gentle rhythm of watering, pruning, and tending to the plants. Today, however, something felt different. She had arrived just after sunrise, expecting the usual silence, but the faint sound of movement made her pause. She turned a corner and froze. There, leaning over a row of orchids, was a man she had never seen before. His dark hair fell into his eyes, and the way he moved careful, deliberate made her heart skip a beat. "Hello," Mia called softly, not wanting to startle him. The man straightened and looked up, his deep brown eyes meeting hers. He smiled, a little shy, a little amused. "Hi. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." Mia's breath caught. "You work here?" "No. I'm just visiting," he said, brushing a stray leaf from his sleeve. There was something about the way he spoke that made her ears tingle, like a quiet melody. "I didn't know anyone else was coming in this early," she said, trying to sound casual, though her chest was suddenly tight. He nodded, glancing around. "I like quiet places. They're peaceful." His voice was low, calm, and for some reason it made her pulse quicken. Mia found herself studying him. He was tall, with a strong build, but there was a softness in his movements. Even the way he held a watering can seemed natural, effortless. She felt a strange curiosity, a pull she didn't understand. "I can show you around," she offered, surprising herself. Normally, she liked being alone here, but something about him made her want to linger. He smiled again, that gentle, warm smile, and nodded. "I'd like that." As they walked together through the rows of plants, Mia felt a flutter in her stomach. She pointed out her favorite orchids, explaining their delicate needs, and he listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was paying attention. It was rare, she thought, to find someone who didn't just nod and smile politely, but actually wanted to understand. The sun climbed higher, casting golden light through the glass and turning the greenhouse into a cathedral of green. Mia felt her hands brush his as they reached for the same small fern, and a shiver ran up her spine. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers lingered for a moment before letting go, and she felt the warmth of that touch long after it ended. "So, you're really into plants?" he asked, his tone playful now, teasing just enough to make her heart race. "I love them," Mia admitted, laughing lightly. "There's something about watching life grow, you know? Something, alive and patient and stubborn at the same time." He nodded slowly. "I get that. There's a kind of magic in it. Quiet, but real." His eyes held hers for a long moment, and she felt exposed, as if he could see the small, private parts of her heart she usually kept hidden. Mia looked away, suddenly aware of how close they were. The heat of the morning sunlight was nothing compared to the warmth building between them. She told herself it was just curiosity, just a friendly connection, but she knew the truth, she wanted to know him. He smiled again, softly, without words this time, and she felt something unspoken pass between them. It was a spark, small but fierce, that seemed to ignite the air around them. For the first time in a long while, Mia didn't just think about plants, or schedules, or the world outside the greenhouse. She thought about him. And that thought made her pulse race, made her stomach twist with anticipation. The quiet hum of the greenhouse seemed louder now, the sunlight warmer, the green of the leaves richer. And as she handed him a small potted orchid, their fingers brushing again, she realized this morning would change everything. The greenhouse had always been her secret place. But now, with him here, it felt like the beginning of something else, a secret she wanted more than anything to explore. The next morning, Mia arrived at the greenhouse with a strange sense of anticipation. She had thought about him all night, his quiet smile, the way he had listened, the warmth in his eyes. She wasn't sure why, but something about him felt different. He wasn't just a stranger, he was someone who had awakened a part of her she hadn't noticed in a long time. As she unlocked the glass doors, a familiar shadow moved among the ferns. Her heart skipped. "Good morning," he said, his voice soft but confident. He held a small watering can, like he had been waiting for her. "Good morning," Mia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "You came early again." "I like mornings," he said simply. "And greenhouses. There's something honest about them." His gaze swept the sunlit leaves, then returned to hers, and Mia felt a shiver she couldn't explain. Today, he was helping her prune the taller plants, reaching for leaves and stems with careful attention. Mia noticed how precise his movements were, how he seemed completely comfortable here despite being new. Every time their hands touched, passing a spade, steadying a pot, she felt a spark that made her pulse quicken. "You know a lot about plants," she said, trying to sound casual. "I've always liked them," he replied, brushing a stray leaf from his sleeve. "There's something calming about taking care of something that depends on you, that grows because of you." His eyes held hers for a long moment, and Mia felt a heat rising in her cheeks. They moved through the greenhouse together, talking quietly. The sun cast golden streaks across the leaves, highlighting the subtle blush on her face and the small smile he couldn't hide. Mia felt an unfamiliar boldness growing inside her. She wanted to know everything about him, the sound of his laugh, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the way he made the air feel electric. At one point, she reached for a trailing vine just as he did. Their fingers touched, and this time neither of them pulled away quickly. Instead, they lingered, almost hesitant, almost daring each other to make the next move. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with an invisible energy that made it hard for Mia to focus on anything but him. You have a way with these plants," he said finally, his voice low. "It's like you understand them." I guess I do," she admitted, looking down at her hands. She didn't know why she was feeling so nervous, so exposed. But she didn't want the moment to end. For the first time, he stepped closer, closing the small space between them. Mia could feel his presence, warm, strong, comforting. Her breath caught as he gently brushed a leaf away from her shoulder, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. "Careful," she whispered, almost to herself, feeling the closeness and the heat between them. "I'm careful," he replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "But not too careful." His eyes flicked to hers, searching, daring, and Mia felt her heart racing faster than ever. The greenhouse seemed suddenly smaller, the sunlight brighter, the scent of earth and flowers intoxicating. Every leaf, every stem, every drop of morning dew felt like it existed just for them, as if the world outside had disappeared. They worked side by side, but their attention kept drifting to each other. Each brush of hands, each shared glance, was a silent conversation. Words were unnecessary when the space between them spoke so clearly. Finally, he stepped back slightly, giving her a playful grin. "You know, I think I could get used to mornings like this, With you. Mia's chest tightened, her stomach fluttering. I. I think I could too, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know where this was heading, only that she wanted to follow it. As the morning sun climbed higher, casting warm patterns across the greenhouse, Mia realized something she hadn't expected. This stranger, this man who had appeared out of nowhere, had already begun to change her world. And she didn't want it to stop. By the third morning, Mia could feel her excitement even before she reached the greenhouse. The thought of seeing him again made her pulse race, and she wondered if he felt the same. She arrived to find the morning sunlight spilling over the plants in golden streams, but her eyes immediately sought him among the greenery. There he was, kneeling beside a row of ferns, hands deep in the soil. When he looked up and saw her, his face lit with a smile that made her heart tighten. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning," Mia replied, her voice a little breathless. She tried to focus on her work, but she couldn't stop glancing at him, noticing the way the sun caught the highlights in his hair and how the tips of his fingers were stained with earth. "Would you like some help?" he asked, standing and offering her a hand. Mia hesitated for a moment, then took it. The warmth of his palm sent a shiver through her, and she had to bite her lip to stop herself from smiling too widely. They worked together, tending to the plants, but the air between them was electric. Every brush of hands, every accidental touch, felt magnified. Mia found herself leaning just slightly closer than necessary, drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. "I've never met anyone who cares about plants like you do," he said quietly, pausing to brush a stray strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered for a heartbeat, and Mia's breath hitched. "It's relaxing," she admitted, looking away. "It's like nothing else matters here." He nodded, stepping closer. "I think I understand that. There's something honest about this place, and about you." His eyes held hers, steady and warm, and she felt her cheeks flush. They moved through the greenhouse, talking less about plants and more about themselves. Mia found herself sharing little pieces of her life, childhood memories of helping her grandmother in the garden, dreams of opening her own botanical studio one day. He listened with rapt attention, asking questions that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. At one point, he reached out to steady a hanging vine that threatened to fall. Their hands brushed again, longer this time, and Mia felt a jolt of electricity shoot through her. He noticed it too, his gaze lingered on hers, intense and unflinching. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, unsure of what she was really asking. "I do," he admitted, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "It's hard to ignore." For a moment, the greenhouse felt suspended in time. The sunlight danced on the leaves, the scent of earth and flowers was thick in the air, and the space between them pulsed with anticipation. Mia's heart pounded in her chest, and she realized she had been holding her breath. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the best possible way. Mia could feel the warmth of his body, the gentle strength in his movements, the quiet intensity in his eyes. She wanted to reach for him, to close the small gap between them, but hesitation held her back. "I don't usually do this," he said softly, "but I feel like I should be honest. I've never met anyone who makes me feel like this." Mia's heart fluttered. "Neither have I," she admitted. Her voice was barely audible, but it was enough. Enough for him to step even closer, enough for the tension to thrum like a live wire between them. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by green leaves and sunlight, caught in the quiet gravity of attraction. Every instinct in her told her to move closer, to reach for him, but she let the moment linger, savoring the heat of anticipation. Finally, he smiled a soft, almost shy smile and reached out to brush a leaf from her shoulder. His fingers trailed down her arm, lingering just enough to send a shiver through her. Mia swallowed hard, aware that this connection was growing stronger, more intense with each passing second. The greenhouse, once her sanctuary of solitude, had transformed into a place of possibility, where every glance, every touch, held unspoken promises. And for the first time, she realized that what was growing between them might be far more delicate, far more alive, and far more irresistible than any plant she had ever cared for. The greenhouse felt warmer than usual that afternoon. Mia had stayed late, letting the sunlight fade into golden streaks that danced across the leaves. She was kneeling by a row of potted ferns, her hands in the soil, when she heard the soft sound of footsteps. He was there again. Her chest tightened, and a small smile tugged at her lips. "Hi," he said, his voice quiet, almost tentative. "You're still here." "I didn't want to leave yet," Mia admitted, brushing dirt from her hands. "It's peaceful when the light hits the plants like this." He stepped closer, tilting his head as he looked around. "It's beautiful," he said. "But not as beautiful as," his words trailed off, and Mia felt a rush of warmth in her chest. The way he looked at her made her feel seen, in a way that went far beyond words. She started, then stopped herself. She didn't know what she wanted to say. She just knew she wanted him near, wanted to feel the quiet closeness that had been building over the past days. He knelt beside her, close enough that their knees brushed. The air between them seemed to thrum with unspoken tension. Mia could feel his warmth, the subtle movement of his body, the gentle rise and fall of his breath. It was intoxicating, almost dizzying. "You've changed the greenhouse," he said softly. "It's alive here. Like it's reflecting you." Mia's heart skipped. I guess it is," she said, unsure if she meant the plants or the space between them. They worked side by side, pruning leaves and adjusting pots, but every movement was charged. Their hands brushed repeatedly, and each time, the electricity between them sparked stronger. Mia's mind struggled to focus on the ferns in front of her. She kept stealing glances at him, noticing the way the sunlight caught his hair, the gentle curve of his smile, the quiet intensity in his eyes. At one point, she dropped a small trowel, and he reached down to pick it up. Their hands met, fingers touching, lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Careful," he whispered, his eyes holding hers. "I am," she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. For a moment, the world outside the greenhouse seemed to vanish. All that existed was the golden light, the scent of soil and leaves, and the closeness that hummed between them. Mia felt a thrill run through her, a mix of anticipation and desire that was entirely new. He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "You fascinate me," he admitted. "There's something about you, quiet, strong, and alive. I can't stop thinking about you." Mia's breath caught. She wanted to speak, to tell him the same, but the words seemed too fragile for the intensity of the moment. Instead, she simply met his gaze, letting her eyes say what her voice couldn't. A soft smile curved his lips, and he gently touched her hand. The simple contact made her stomach flutter, like a tiny storm had erupted inside her. She realized that what had started as curiosity and attraction was now something deeper, something she didn't want to resist. They paused, both aware of the pull between them. The greenhouse, once her sanctuary of solitude, had transformed into a place where hearts could speak without words, where glances and touches carried more meaning than any conversation. Finally, he sighed softly, brushing a leaf from her hair. "I think I could stay here forever," he murmured. His hand lingered near hers, just close enough to make her shiver, just far enough to leave the moment hanging on the edge of something inevitable. Mia's fingers twitched, wanting to reach for him, wanting to close the space that separated them. She realized that this connection, the warmth, the tension, the quiet intimacy, was no longer something she could ignore. She wanted it, needed it, in a way that frightened and thrilled her at the same time. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows through the glass panels. The greenhouse seemed to glow, the leaves and flowers bathed in golden light, reflecting the heat that had grown between them over these past days. And Mia knew, with a certainty that made her heart race, that nothing about their connection would ever be the same again. This was no longer just about plants or quiet mornings. It was about them, about the spark that had ignited, about the unspoken promise that hung in the air, about the passion that waited quietly in the warmth of the greenhouse. The next morning, the greenhouse felt different to Mia. The air was warmer, heavier with the scent of blooming flowers and damp soil. She could feel it, the anticipation, the unspoken tension that had grown between her and him over the past days. Every time she thought about him, her heart raced, her stomach fluttered, and her hands itched to reach out. She opened the glass doors to find him already inside, kneeling beside a row of ferns, carefully pruning the leaves. When he looked up and saw her, a soft smile curved his lips. "Good morning," he said, his voice low, smooth, carrying a warmth that made her pulse quicken. "Good morning," Mia replied, her voice slightly shaky, betraying the excitement she tried to hide. She felt herself drawn to him, unable to keep her gaze away. "You're early again," he said, standing and brushing a hand across his pants as he approached her. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," she said, stepping aside to let him pass. But as he moved closer, the small space between them felt charged. Each step he took made her heart beat louder, each glance sent warmth through her chest. They worked side by side, tending to the plants, but their conversation drifted from flowers to small pieces of their lives. Mia found herself laughing more freely than she had in weeks. Every time he laughed too, she felt it ripple through her, a quiet connection that seemed to deepen with each passing moment. At one point, he handed her a small pot of orchids. Their fingers brushed, and this time, neither of them pulled away. Mia felt a shiver run up her arm, a mix of nervousness and desire. "You have a way with these plants," he said softly, his eyes locking onto hers. "But I think you have a way with people too. You make everything feel alive, even me." Mia felt her cheeks flush, and she looked down at her hands. I like being here. It's peaceful," she admitted. But she didn't need to say more, he could see the truth in her eyes. The greenhouse seemed to shrink around them. The sunlight streaming through the glass panels caught in his hair, highlighted the lines of his face, and made every movement he made mesmerizing. Mia felt herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by an invisible force. He noticed. He stepped closer, reducing the distance between them to barely an inch. Mia could feel the heat radiating from him, the gentle strength in his presence. "Mia," he whispered, as if saying her name out loud was a confession in itself. Her breath caught. She wanted to reach out, to close the space, to feel him closer, but hesitation held her back for a heartbeat. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and pulsing, as if the greenhouse itself was holding its breath. Finally, he reached out, gently brushing a leaf from her shoulder, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. Mia's skin tingled under his touch, and her heart raced. She felt the pull between them, undeniable and consuming. She started, then stopped, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. He stepped closer still, just close enough that she could feel his presence fully. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice like a bomb. "You don't have to say anything. I feel it too." For a long moment, they just stood there, caught in the unspoken current between them. The greenhouse, with its lush plants and golden light, seemed to shrink to the space they occupied. Every sound, the drip of water, the rustle of leaves, the soft hum of the air, faded into nothing but the rhythm of their hearts. Mia finally met his gaze fully, and the connection between them seemed to pull them together. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining, and she felt a warmth spread through her body, a quiet thrill that made her pulse race. "Stay close," he whispered, his forehead brushing against hers. "Yes," she breathed, feeling a shiver of anticipation and excitement. And in that moment, surrounded by green leaves, soft sunlight, and the intoxicating scent of the greenhouse, Mia realized that nothing between them would ever be the same again. Something had begun, something passionate, intense, and alive, and she knew that this connection, this spark, would only grow stronger. The greenhouse was quiet that morning, bathed in the soft golden glow of early sunlight. Mia moved through the rows of plants, her heart fluttering with anticipation. She had been thinking about him constantly, replaying every glance, every brush of hands, every soft word he had spoken. The tension between them had grown undeniable, and she felt a thrill of nervous excitement as she unlocked the glass doors. He was already there, kneeling beside a row of orchids, carefully adjusting the delicate blooms. When he saw her, a warm smile spread across his face, and Mia felt her stomach tighten. "Good morning," he said softly, his eyes holding hers in a way that made her breath catch. "Good morning," she replied, her voice a little shaky, betraying the flutter in her chest. She stepped closer, feeling the pull that seemed to draw them together every time they were near. "You're early," he said, standing and brushing a hand across his pants. "I hope I didn't scare you off." "Not at all," she said, forcing a small smile, though her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the warmth of his presence even before he moved closer. They began working side by side, tending to the plants, but the conversation was sparse, replaced by a tension that hummed in the air. Every brush of hands, every shared movement carried a weight of anticipation. Mia felt herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by an invisible magnet she could no longer resist. At one point, he reached out to adjust a small pot, his fingers brushing against hers. The contact was electric, sending a shiver through her that made her pulse race. "Careful," he whispered, his voice low, almost intimate. "I'm careful," she replied softly, though her voice trembled. She could feel her body responding to him in ways she hadn't expected. The greenhouse seemed to shrink around them. The sunlight poured through the glass, catching his hair and casting a halo of warmth over his face. Mia felt a rush of desire mixed with curiosity. She wanted to know everything about him, to be close, to feel the quiet intimacy that had been building between them for days. He noticed her lingering gaze and stepped closer, reducing the small space between them to almost nothing. "Mia," he murmured, his voice gentle but charged with emotion. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath caught, and her fingers itched to reach for him. "I feel the same," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know what had come over her, only that she wanted this, wanted him, wanted the closeness, wanted the connection that pulsed between them. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering at her cheek. Mia's skin tingled under his touch, a warmth spreading through her that made her heart race. The world outside the greenhouse seemed to disappear. The hum of the air, the soft rustle of leaves, even the scent of earth and flowers faded into nothing but the warmth and tension that surrounded them. "I've wanted this for days," he confessed, his forehead brushing against hers. "Every moment we've spent here, it's made me realize how much I need to be close to you." Mia's heart pounded. "Me too," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She reached out, letting her fingers rest on his arm, feeling the strength and warmth there. They stood like that for a long moment, suspended in the quiet intimacy of the greenhouse. The connection between them was undeniable, a living, breathing force that pulled them closer with each passing second. Finally, he leaned even closer, his lips hovering near her temple, and she felt her breath catch in anticipation. The electricity between them was almost overwhelming, a magnetic pull that neither could resist. The sunlight shifted, bathing them in a golden glow. The greenhouse, once just a place of plants and quiet mornings, had become a sanctuary for their hearts, a space where emotions could flourish as freely as the greenery around them. And in that moment, Mia knew this spark, this tension, this quiet, unspoken passion was only the beginning. What was growing between them was alive, urgent, and impossible to ignore. The greenhouse was bathed in the soft afternoon light, golden and warm, like the air itself was holding its breath. Mia moved through the plants, her hands brushing over leaves and petals, but her mind was elsewhere. Every thought led back to him, the warmth in his eyes, the gentle strength in his touch, the quiet pull she couldn't resist. He was already there, kneeling beside a row of orchids, adjusting the delicate blooms with care. When he looked up and saw her, a smile spread across his face that made her heart flutter. "Hey," he said softly, standing as she approached. "You're here early again." I couldn't wait," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Her cheeks warmed, and she felt a rush of nervous excitement. She had thought about this moment all morning, imagining what it would feel like to finally let go of the hesitation that had kept them apart. He stepped closer, closing the small distance between them. "Me neither," he said, his voice low, gentle, and filled with emotion. "Every time we're here together, I feel like nothing else matters." Mia's breath caught. She wanted to tell him how she felt, how every glance, every touch, had made her pulse race and her heart ache with anticipation. Instead, she simply let her eyes meet his, letting the connection speak for her. The air between them seemed to thrum, alive with the quiet intensity that had been building over days. Mia's fingers itched to reach for him, to feel his hand, to close the space that had kept them both hovering at the edge of something inevitable. Finally, he reached out, taking her hand in his. The simple contact sent a shiver through her, warmth spreading from her fingers up her arm, making her pulse quicken. "Mia," he whispered, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. She felt a thrill of anticipation and joy. "Yes," she breathed, not needing any more words. The single syllable carried all the longing, all the desire, all the unspoken promises that had been growing between them. He stepped even closer, letting their bodies almost touch, the warmth radiating from him enveloping her. "I've wanted this, wanted you, for so long," he murmured, his voice low and steady, full of quiet passion. Mia's chest tightened, her heart pounding. "I've wanted this too," she admitted, feeling a rush of courage and excitement. She let herself lean closer, letting the electricity between them draw her in, letting the trust and longing she had held onto finally surface. Their hands intertwined fully now, fingers locked, and he gently lifted her chin, his eyes holding hers with a tenderness that made her feel safe, cherished, and alive all at once. Every brush of his hand, every quiet movement, sent ripples of emotion through her, like the greenhouse itself was reflecting the warmth growing between them. "I think," he whispered, his forehead brushing against hers, "that this is just the beginning. I want more." Mia smiled, a mixture of joy and relief flooding her heart. "Me too," she whispered back. "I've never felt like this before. I don't want it to end." The sunlight poured through the glass roof, illuminating the greenery around them and casting a golden glow over their faces. In that warm, intimate space, surrounded by the life she had nurtured for years, Mia felt a sense of completeness she hadn't known was possible. They stayed close, hands intertwined, hearts beating in quiet rhythm. The greenhouse had become more than a sanctuary for plants, it had become a place of connection, passion, and trust. It was where they had found each other, where the tension, the longing, and the quiet sparks had finally come to life. For the first time in a long while, Mia allowed herself to fully feel the warmth, the closeness, the quiet exhilaration of being with someone who understood her in a way no one else ever had. And as she looked into his eyes, she knew that whatever the future held, this moment, this connection, would stay with her forever. The greenhouse hummed softly around them, leaves swaying gently in the warm afternoon light. And in that quiet, golden space, Mia and he finally let themselves be together, letting the unspoken passion and tender intimacy that had grown over days bloom fully like the most delicate, vibrant flower, alive and unstoppable.